What's up guys, this is Sean and welcome back to the iherng podcast, and today this episode is brought to you by Open House, a brand new property app that allows you to find out the projects that's located within a specific location. Definitely can help you fulfill that 20 project research. Do download it and give it a try. It's very useful. And let's head on to the email today from Edwin. The headline itself is quite capturing already. Question is to sell at a huge loss or rent out first. Wow. Hi Sean, first off, a big thank you for sharing so much insight about properties. Many years back, I have made a decision to buy a 3-bedroom condo with zero initial capital and intend for my own stay. The project is in Cyberjaya. When the property was VP'd, the quality turned out to be very bad and far from what was promised at show unit, where they say what you see is what you get. Developer also don't seem to care much as they still have new phases to be launched and focusing on selling more units instead. With no initial entry also means there are people who actually cannot afford the property upon VP and people who are simply desperate to rent out at a lower rent to any tenant without filtering, hence driving the market price for property sales and rental much lower than expectation. Since 2021, I have decided to move my family to Singapore and sell the house, but to date, it doesn't spark any interest as I was selling at my loan price, where it's 1,003 square feet, the SPA price was 720, the loan was 650. Current valuation is only about 550,000. As I was not interested in renting out previously as I don't like the hassle, now I'm considering to rent out while waiting to sell. However, I will need to put in additional 20 to 25,000 to revamp and fix some issues before the unit is optimal for rent. My unit installment is about 3,200 excluding maintenance, and the rental rate for a fully furnished unit at my area is 2,300 to 2,500 per month. I believe I can push my rental price to 2,600 or 7,000 as my furnishings are decent because it was meant for own stay previously. So I was wondering if my intention is simply to sell. Is it worth it to put extra to revamp, to rent out first, or better to just reduce the selling price instead, hoping can sell soon? Hope to hear from you. PS. Paying money installments is not an issue. It's the psychological part that bothers me. So a rather direct question, and this question, I do not hope a lot of people will have it, but unfortunately a lot of people does. Where everybody keeps thinking that property confirm make money. This is one big myth lah. So first of all, thank you very much for the question, Edwin. And this is in Cyberjaya. And this location is one particular location where the entire behavior is out of norm. From an architectural fan, I love Cyberjaya. Like the entire skyline of Cyberjaya, the architecture of the offices, of the residents, right, all are amazing. As a property investor, then I will be very cautious because it used to be a fiesta for auctions. A lot of units are constantly being auctioned off, but this applies to the high-rise apartments, especially smaller ones. That's why a lot of friends who bought Cyberjaya, include my good friend, right, bought Cyberjaya, is constantly losing money. All of my friends who've bought apartments in Cyberjaya, 100% lost money. 100%. But does it mean that it's a bad location? Not necessarily. It just means that all these friends of mine, all these people overpaid for the properties at that location. For all landed, then it's a very different story. Landed properties in Cyberjaya are highly in demand, which I would think so because the entire surrounding, the entire infrastructure, it's perfect to raise a family. You will have parks in abundance, empty space in abundance. And now with a brand new MRT station, I think it's going to somewhat be better. So from an own stay point of view, I think if you were to rent in Cyberjaya, there's a lot of value if you don't have to really clock in the office in KL all the time. I think it's superb in terms of value. For investment then, I do think that there are a lot of other options. But if you want to really still invest in Cyberjaya, I don't know why you still want to invest, but if you still want to, you should always make the right comparison to the median price of the location. From this example of this audience, right, we all must first accept that all new properties today are selling future price of the property. It means, let's say, if you were to go into a sales gallery today for any project lah, you want to buy, right? The price seems to be very high and borderline kukuan. Because technically all developers are now pricing in all the uncertainty, pricing is all the risk of inflation and etc. for the next 4 years. And this is somewhat what they have learned after going through the lockdown. A lot of projects that were sold out were heavily affected during the lockdown because when they launched, they sold out very good so the project is in profit actually. But when they go through lockdown, the increase of material costs, in the labor costs, shortage of this, shortage of that, cannot start work on, etc. End up they lose all their margin. Some even declare losses just to complete the project, which I totally appreciate. So these are developers with dignity, right? Really want to just at least complete the project to all their customers. Because we can witness that a lot of projects are actually abandoned, which is the worst. That's why now a lot of developers are very careful with their pricing. And when we always discuss the 4 different channels of buying a property, number 1, which is new properties directly from developer, then we have sub-sale, then we have auction, then we have bulk purchase, right? The benefit of having this concept, please utilize this as a guidance when we are going to invest in the next property. So when I go into a particular property, if it's a new property, I will need to know who is selling it. So sometimes you will have developers selling it directly. We will have some bulk purchasers or investment club underwriting a certain block. Then sometimes the project is halfway and there will be a possibility of getting a fire sale from a very urgent owner. And sometimes within the auction market, there are also opportunities. So there are projects where it's completed but not 100% sold. There are various ways to get the best price of the project. The only variation here will be the amount of capital required. And here in the email, he also said that because he suspect because it was 0 initial capital, meaning 0 down payment where basically developers are giving like 10% discount and they give you free legal fee, free SPA and etc. So that makes the entire ownership process very easy. First of all, this is a very beautiful part about the property scene in Malaysia. Is actually a taboo but an open one. Everybody kind of know discounts are given. Although sales number looks very good, but in the sub-sale market then it's very much affected. So a lot of people last time used to tell me that they actually lose money after receiving the keys to their brand new unit compared to their SPA price. That's not the right way of thinking, because when you buy, for example, a 700,000 property, 0 down payment, right? Your loan amount is 90% of 700,000, which is 630,000. 630,000 is the actual cost. Everybody within the sub-sale market who are somewhat desperate, right, will sell the property at the rate where it incurs 0 losses. So as long as they can exceed at 630,000, it's good enough. A lot of owners will have the wrong perception is, new properties, right, when they sell sure lower than my SPA price, you sure lose money. No. That's the discount you have gotten already. So please do not include that. And especially for first-time home buyers, right, who have bought a brand new project, you should always benchmark against your net price, not the fluff amount that the developers give you, yeah? But the beautiful part about this is that Malaysia is one of the only countries that allows you to own properties with 0 down payment. Right? The rest of the world commonly applies 20 to 25%. Some allows you to use your retirement fund to subsidize a little bit, but 20% would be the standard amount of down payment. And after putting in 20% down payment, if the property rent can somewhat cover the installment up to 80%, it's considered a very good investment property. Only in Malaysia, where Malaysian buyers are just spoiled, we now expect 0, not only 0, it needs to include free legal fee, free SPA, free cabinet, free kitchen, free bicycle, free touch and go voucher, free umbrella. Some even expect cashback. After buying the property, I need to have another 10 to 15% cashback for renovation. At the same time, still expect the rent to be higher than installment. Is there such property? Yes. Is that all of the properties? Of course not. So it's entirely up to the level of our homework and preparation, right, to really find all these property. So that's the skill set right there lah. So within the same game, some people make money, some people lose money. But as highlighted as Edwin, this encourages a lot of people who have this wrong expectation of affordability. By you qualifying for the loan, technically it wouldn't be a problem for you to own the property already. Technically, because the entire criteria to qualify for the loan is actually very strict. But just that there is a very blur part about the decrease calculation, the DSR calculation format in Malaysia. Like the weirdest thing for first timers, right, if you're listening to this, right, you will find this very amusing. If I buy a property and pay installment of 2,000 for it, the 2,000 is included in my debt service ratio calculation, which means if my salary is 5,000, I need to deduct off that 2,000, so left 3,000, and that 3,000 is the total amount that can be used if I were to buy another new property. But In another scenario, I buy this property, the same property I were to rent out at 2005 for example. But then where do I stay? I stay next door at 2005 per month. A bit weird, why don't you just stay at your own property? Why you need to rent out the unit and then you go and rent another property? Because the DSR calculation will be 2005 minus 2000, you will have 500 ringgit in surplus every month. And that will be included into your active income of 5,000 per month. So if you are going to take another loan for the second property, now your income is 5,500 instead of 3,000 of the earlier scenario. But aren't you getting a rental unit next door you are paying 2,005? Our DSR calculation does not consider that as a commitment. So by you renting 2,005, it does not take out commitment away from your active income. But if you live in your own house that you buy, it affects your loan application process for your next property investment. Yeah. So not necessarily you qualify for the loan, it means that you can afford the property, because a lot of aspect within the lifestyle is not considered under the DSR calculation. So back to Edwin's scenario, right? His loan amount is 650,000, but valuation is only 550. Why is this very important? Especially for owners who are thinking of selling their property, right? First, get a valuation done for the property, because this will heavily affect the potential buyer's consideration of getting your property. So let's say if there's a new buyer, for example, who's going to come in, hey, I love your unit, your unit feng shui ngam la, number ngam la, feeling ngam la, yu leng zai la, I will buy from you, okay? But when I want to apply for the loan, maximum they will accept 550,000. So if I were to buy your property at 650,000 because I really love it, unfortunately, maximum the bank will only give 550. For the 100,000, it's either you pay by cash or you buy somewhere else. That's why it's very, very important. It also puts a very realistic expectation to the discussion. Because as an owner, we always think our unit is the most beautiful unit in the world. We want to sell high, right? But potential buyers, they will always want to squeeze you down. They want to buy very low, right? So the valuation report gives a very realistic element to the discussion, which I think is very, very important. And the unit installment right now for him is 3,002 plus maintenance is around 3,005 lah. And a fully furnished unit realistically is around 2,005 in average. So every month he's bleeding around 1,000. So the question is it better to exit the project right now and lose 100,000, or to continuously bleed extra 1,000 by renting out the unit? But to rent out the unit, he also need to pour out another extra 25,000 to furnish up the property. What would be your suggestion? In my opinion, there's one more data point that is missing here, which is the outstanding loan amount. Yes, he may have bought the property several years back. Throughout the years, he have been paying the installment. So although the loan amount is 650,000, maybe he has paid, let's assume 3,005, he paid for 10 years, 384, which is 280,000. But for the first 10 years, 85% is all interest. So at most 15% of the total amount will be to knock off the principal amount. So 280,000, 15% is 42,000, which means 650,000 minus 42,000. Give or take around 600,000 for the ease of calculation. So if your outstanding amount is 600,000, you sell at 550, for example, there will be a difference of 50,000 that you will need to bear as an owner. So it's either you pay cash for the outstanding amount, but for a lot of cases, a lot of people actually very 可怜, very kasian, where they take a personal loan to cover the difference after selling the property, right? They actually still owe money to the bank. This kind of scenarios usually happens to cars, especially brand new cars. Once you drive to the showroom, within 3 years time you want to sell, right? The value of the car drops so much that it's below the loan amount that you owe to the bank. So if you were to sell the car, there will still be an outstanding amount. After clearing the loan, not enough, they take a personal loan to cover the difference. In this case, it's about 50,000. So here, if the amount is break even, if the loan amount is very, very close to the market valuation, then I would definitely sell if there's a buyer lah. And the main reason is highly dependent on your perception on the address. If you believe that the project will be successful in the next 10 years, maybe after Tesla building their factory there, the entire perception of Cyberjaya will elevate. That's why you can actually make money. I don't know, right? Entirely up to you. But how I would do this, if the amount of difference is something that I can totally afford, I will do so and reallocate my resources, which is my credit and my money, into somewhere else. This is one aspect of opportunity cost that a lot of people don't think about. Because imagine a 3,500 monthly installment, right? If I were to put into a project at a thriving location, for example, Long Kiara lah, Dutamas lah, Bukit Jalil lah, or Setia Alam lah, or wherever lah, right? Where statistically there's a progress, not I say one, not because Sean trying to goreng all the location that he buy. No. If you look into data points, these are the location that is very high in search. These are the locations that's very high in transactions. If you were to allocate your credit and your cash flow in those locations, in 10-20 years time, it will be a better bet against this particular project. Well, that is provided if you can afford to pay the difference. If you cannot afford that 50,000, but looking in your story, you move your whole family to Singapore, right? I doubt that's going to be a problem. But for those who are listening at home, if you have a similar case, but if the lump sum payment is a problem, then just hold it first. But you'll lose in opportunity cost, so be it. That's the consequences of a bad mistake, mah. There's also another way where you can cough out 25,000, make it nice, rent it out, so it reduces the burden of cash flow every month, and that's about it. The issue here of this location is the rental can only go as high. It will not be and forever will not be higher than your monthly installment because of the lack of job opportunities, because of the lack of temporary demand of space within that location. Too bad. Because in other incidents, if your rent can cover the installment, it actually broadens the target audience of buyers. So some properties, it's very obvious, it's for own stay nature. All the house buyers that come in are buying for own stay ones. So they don't really care about the rental figure whatsoever. But if the rental is also very good, investors will also participate in that pool to come and visit your properties. And one way to do it is by getting the unit rented out, and you can actually sell with tenancy. And if the potential buyer is young like me, if he can qualify for 35 years loan, right? But when you buy the property, you only took 20 years loan, for example, the investment might not make sense for you, although it's the same yield, right? But the monthly repayment by the younger buyer makes more sense in terms of investment. So every month he actually breaks even, but for you, you are actually bleeding. Sometimes you can also exit the property in that manner from an investment perspective to the potential buyer. But the most important sentence, right, within the email itself is the very last part. The psychological part. That is a very, very important element, especially for high performers. Like our headspace is only so limited. If we continue to expand and focus more things, right, it will only dilute our attention on the important things. And I can totally understand this. Sometimes it's not like the renter cannot cover installment. Actually, I don't care. What's frustrating is that sometimes the tenant come and kacau lah, lighting something wrong lah, piping something wrong lah, agent come and text you lah, this lah, that lah. So what I learned is there are stages to the property investment journey as well. So whenever there's an issue within the unit, and if your first reaction is still, hey, I need to get somebody to do it, right? It means you are not there yet as a property investor. Of course, this is evolution. Of course, when you have only one investment property, of course you do lah, right? Because like for most of the clients in the makeover guys, we will always suggest them to get the services from our other subsidiary, which is called TPG, the property guys, right? They are the property management side of things. So after getting the unit ready, they will look for tenants for you. If anything wrong, the tenants will liaise with them, not you. And if it requires some payment, of course, then you look for you lah. And that should be the way for people who wish to grow their entire property investment portfolio. So if our resources is limited, we cannot afford services, then we use our own time and effort lor. Too bad lah, right? But that's part of the journey to owning a property portfolio. But when you have one, you have two, you have three, eventually like at my stage, right? When management send me an email about leakages, right? It's not my problem also. It should be run by the property guys. They will make the necessary arrangement. They go inspect the problem, give me a quotation. Am I agreeable to pay? I'll just make the payment and everything just sorted out. I don't have to really go to site, arrange this, call this, open the door, please, this, cannot one. And for that purpose, I think my recommendation, if you can afford, which I think you can clearly do, looking at the exchange rate between Sing dollar and Malaysian ringgit right now, right? I would choose to exit the property just because of my perception of this location and this property type in this location itself. I will get rid of it, have a peace of mind. Is then a separate discussion for your case where if you're moving there, right? is there going to be a conversation about converting into a PR? Because that will eventually lead to a HDB owning conversation. And by owning any properties in Malaysia, it will be an obstacle to that process. That is an additional aspect to the discussion that you must also consider since you are in Singapore and with your kids all living in Singapore, right? Eventually, because I'm very familiar, this is a topic very close to heart because my brother is living in Singapore. And the option between owning a HDB and Malaysia, right? Anytime a HDB will be a perfect choice. Looking at the entire property market right there, right? Anytime. But after you own one, then we will eventually figure out, or we have already figured out, you actually look for ways to own more properties in Malaysia without compromising this, right? But this is a discussion that you must have also with your family. Because the other option of furnishing it and renting it out, right? I don't have any confidence that the property will appreciate further even after 10 years' time. The worst case scenario is I rent out, after paying for the difference between the rent and installment, I still lose money. So last time 550,000, now it's 500,000. So every month I pay already and it's still losing money. So the worst thing is when we pay interest for things that are depreciating in value. That's cars. It's one of those things that we are okay to take loan, right? To own a value depreciating item. Property shouldn't be that. That's why property is one of those beautiful things where we can take loan to own something that will appreciate in value. So that's the whole core of real estate investment. In this one, I would suggest otherwise. If it's in a different location, for example, Mont Kiara or those thriving locations, right? I would say to hold. But if it's in those locations, you wouldn't even send me this email. So, yeah. And I guess that's my suggestion for now. Thank you very much for highlighting this issue because the psychological part, the peace, is very valuable. So for everyone who are like thriving right now, we're just pursuing excellence in our career pathways, do prioritize peace of mind. Well, it's often easier said than done, but that is why I invest in real estate because I don't have the luxury of attention and time to keep track on every announcement of every world event or whatsoever. Whatever happens internationally, right? My rental is still the same one. So as long as the first step, I ensure that my rent can cover my installment, I will just continue to let the property roll so I can focus on what's important, like my work, like my family, like my health, like my mental state, and etc. That's the whole concept of property investment for me. It's a very simple process, but I didn't say it was easy. So Edwin, thank you once again for writing in. And for those who still have any questions regarding real estate, do just email me at taniherng@gmail.com, or you can just DM me on Instagram, iherng, and I will see you guys on the next one. Ciao.